Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Larry Rolla.
And probably hundreds of thousands of people, I think it was, that volunteered for this experimental treatment that was supposed to be the cure-all. And out of 100,000 terminally ill people, I went down there, they picked 10. And out of the 10 that they picked were the least sick of all of them. And you know what? And we followed it. And I had the film. They all died. So it's just, I don't want to say bullshit, but to me it was bullshit because I lived through it. And that whole thing became very, very personal to me. And that's why I say it's sad that they never let him in. And only now, after 30, 40 years, they're starting to recognize that build up your own immune system and let your own body fight this. Only now they're talking about that rather than radiation and chemotherapy. And I watched so many people. I used to go down there because I used to bring a lot of the kids down there. I used to go down there, and every morning he was able to handle about 100 people every morning and take blood. He can only handle about 100 people. And that was the other bad thing about not being in the States and not being able to train other people to do what he's doing, because he can only handle 100 people at a time. So every 6 months every 6 weeks he'd get another 100 people. But if you were on a waiting list, if you came through me, he squeezed you in. You know, you had an edge if you came through me. Yeah. And it was unbelievable, because in 60 Minutes found this out, even though they never aired it. They were down there for 5 days, shot hundreds of hours of film. And when they got back here, the powers that be, meaning the powers of 60 Minutes, they, instead of doing a whole hour of this very, very serious situation, they cut it down to 10 minutes and they put all the bullshit in there in the 10 minutes and never told the real story. But when I was down there with people, and I made a video of this, I don't know if I have it any longer. My friend Bob might still have it. That's who I went down there with. We would talk to the people that were on this line every morning, and people that were castrated because they had prostate cancer, people that were lost limbs and everything, and none of it was ever necessary. And everybody that worked for Dr. Burton was a cancer doctor in the States that had cancer and they knew there was no cure, but they heard about Dr. Burton. They all went to the Bahamas, got cured, and stayed there working for him. So that was the situation. And one day, and some of the people that are listening now, and I guarantee you, everybody that's listening to this podcast now has somebody in their family or some close friend that has cancer. Everyone. I'd bet my right arm that everyone knows somebody. Now, I forgot what I was going to say. See, every time I go off track,
when you come down there, you have.
I got it. I got it back. Here's what they should do for people that are into it, because Dr. Burton unfortunately died years back from a heart attack. And Dr. Clements took over. That's who was there the last time I went down there. He's no longer there. He retired, but the clinic is still there. It's the IAT Clinic. I hope that it's the same name. IAT Clinic, Dr. Lawrence Burton, Freeport, Bahamas. And that's, if you Google Dr. Lawrence Burton IAT Clinic, you'll get the whole thing. There's a bullshit thing in there because the government, and this is how fucking slimy the government is. And I hate to talk about that because it's the American government, and this is the greatest country in the world, but I'll tell you, sometimes they do shitty things between the CIA, the FBI, and the government themselves, and the lobbyists that are there protecting all the pharmaceutical companies and the cancer companies and everything. They do some shitty things. Um, but I lost my train of thought again.
Said
But
the
anyway,
hospital. The hospital is still there.
the hospital's still there. Now let me just say this: if they go on YouTube, because Gary Null is an American guy. He's one of these health freaks and was investigating uh, cancer research and everything and all kinds of alternative therapy. He's a pretty smart guy, a pretty sharp guy, and he always wanted an interview with Dr. Burton. And finally, Dr. Burton agreed. I told Doctor, I says, look, why don't you interview with this guy? He's a heavyweight in the States and he might be able to help you. So finally he got an interview. So anybody that wants to hear about Dr. Burton, go on YouTube and punch in the interview that Gary Null had with Dr. Lawrence Burton, or Dr. Lawrence Burton interview with Gary Null. It's on YouTube. Now there's three different episodes. Make sure you start off with episode 1. You'll find them. They're around there. Start off with episode 1, because if you start in the middle, you're not going to even know what they're talking about. Start off with 1, then go to 2, then go to 3. And then if you were smart, you would call the clinic, because I'm sure they're doing this. I'm sure they're doing the same thing. So that's it. And today, I believe that the insurance company pays for them treatments. I'm surprised that clinic is not here in New York. But that if you listen to Dr. Burton and what he went through, because he tells his whole story. I just breezed right through it real quick, but he tells his whole story. And I almost wrote a book about this. But then I'm going to tell you something you're not going to believe, but it's true. I was sent a message to go on a street, and I can't remember the street. I can't remember the corner. Get all Dr. Burton's research, everything that I knew about him and everything. Stand on this corner with a folder and an envelope, and just stand there, put the envelope behind my back, and somebody's going to grab it and just turn it loose. Now, that sounds like movie shit. That sounds like bullshit, but that's what happened. I was told to stand on this corner, and I did. I put all the information in there, everything I knew about him and everything that I did and how I was involved and why I was involved. And I put it all in a folder, in a manila envelope, a big, I guess it was 10 by 12 envelope, whatever. I stood on the corner of Manhattan that they told me. I put my hands behind my back, holding this envelope kind of snug, and somebody ripped it right out of my hands and kept going, and that was that. And it was scary, because there is no doubt in my mind, and I'm not going to go into all this conspiracy stuff, but there is no doubt in my mind that the CIA, they do a lot of good shit, but they do a lot of scary shit. And I'm not going to get into none of that stuff, but I was just concerned at that time. And I stopped worrying about all of that when the information became available. The internet came out. He put a website on the internet, and insurance companies start taking this. And I had to get away from it, because you get caught up in it. It's just like when you hear these horror stories about these young kids that are dying. I mean, it's so sad. You see them now on television with the St. Jude hospitals and everything else. And these poor little kids suffering, got so much, and they just die, and it's so sickening. I got away from it just at the right time, because it was really starting to get to me. I couldn't sleep just thinking about the last phone call that I got. It was just sickening. So if there's anybody out there that has cancer and was given a bad diagnosis, just look up Dr. Lawrence Burton's clinic. He's dead, but the clinic is still there. It's the same, and I'm sure by now and I'm sure by now it's a lot more sophisticated. I'm sure if you call, and I don't know this, but I'm sure now if you call, they're going to ask you, okay, send all your doctor records in, send this in, send that in, and then they're probably gonna weed you out because they can't take 1 million patients because of the situation that they're in. I think they can, back then they can only handle 101 patients at a time. That was it. I don't know if that's still the case, but they're probably going to ask you when I was involved, I made one phone call and you got to the top of the list. If I came down with 10 people, I would orchestrate a flight, go down there with the 10, 15 kids, walk them in and say, here they are, doc. And they would all get in. That's not the case any longer, but just call up and listen to them interviews with Gary Null and Dr. Lawrence Burton.
How fast from when he passed away did you give up that envelope?
Oh, it was during the time. It was during when he was alive. I told him about that. I says, look, they must be checking into you. It was after the congressional hearing. I'm going to tell you something else, and this is the truth. President Carter. And I don't know anything about politics. I don't know what years he was president. I have no idea. All I know is that I got a phone call one day, and they said President Carter has a sister who was terminal cancer, and they asked me for some information. Now maybe that had something to do with that CIA thing or whoever took the envelope. I don't know. All I know is that I got in touch with somebody, I forget who it was, and they said, we're trying to get her down there, but she won't go because she's a Jehovah's Witness or something like that. And they didn't believe in doctors. And then 6 months later, I get a call, can you get her down there? All of a sudden, now she was near death. And she died before we could even make arrangements to get her down there. But she wouldn't go when we could have got her in because she was a Jehovah's Witness, whatever that means. Maybe they don't believe in doctors. I don't know. But it was
pretty wild, pretty crazy story.
And the stories I could give you, I could go on forever. And it got me so mad. It almost put me in jail a couple of times. And but you know, I did what I did. So maybe because of this podcast, the guys, well, I guess everybody knows I wrote a book and it's going to be a TV series and we're working on that right now. Maybe after say they'd want to, because as of today, you go to the doctor, it's the same bullshit. Chemotherapy, radiation, and operation. That's it. And you go there after a week or 2 weeks, you have no hair, you're throwing up after every treatment, and then you wind up dying. You know, it's the same thing. And then they give you a big thing. Okay, we consider you cured if you live 5 years after the treatment. No, what the fuck? You know, well, what's that mean?
My friend Sonny has cancer right now. My friend Sonny.
Yeah, that means if you're 5 years old, based on the Cancer Society, if you live to be 11, the treatment worked, and you die at 11. So, you know, what the hell's that mean? Cure to me means like my cousin. When I brought her down there, it's 45 years ago. She's still alive and well and cancer free. That's a cure for me, not 5 years after the treatment. What the, I don't get it. And I used to get so mad. And that's why I had to stay off of a lot of these television shows. I'm almost positive we were on Phil Donahue, Oprah. I know we were on television shows. I just can't remember the ones. But I couldn't go on because when I start talking about this, especially back then when I was involved, they threw me out of the chamber once.
Because you get so mad because they're not cooperating.
Works and you want to bury it. Why? How could you say that chemotherapy, radiation, and operation are the only cures you have that are proven not to work, and the cancer rate is still the same, everything is still the same, and yet you have cancer drives on? It used to get me crazy when this guy had basically 100% cure rate, and you don't even want to hear about it. You know, like, get the fuck out of here.
Because they don't want a cure. Because if they have a cure, Larry, if they have a cure, they're going to lose all that money for raising money for it and all this.
You're exactly right. And that's why I had to stay off the television shows. That's why I couldn't go on, because I would run my mouth like this. And back then I was a lot worse. Now I'm old and I'm just old and grumpy. But back then I was young and full of piss and vinegar, and I'd go right at you with this stuff. This is not make believe. This is not nothing. This is saving little kids, everybody's life, but especially the little kids. You know what it is to see a little kid, 10, 11 years old, just wasted away, riddled with chemotherapy, and it was terrible. And then when you go to the doctor, like a lot of people, many times, I would take the kid. The mother says, well, my doctor says that I shouldn't take him down there because, number one, it's bullshit. It don't work. Number two, they have a new thing and they think this would work. It could pinpoint the thing and everything else. And then you want to go to the doctor and you want to fucking strangle him because
wring his neck.
It's all about, and that's a sad thing, not only with cancer, about everything in the whole world. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. The line of morality moves whenever money is involved. And sometimes it gets completely eliminated when money is involved. And that includes politicians. That includes presidents.